Cloudflare ticker net just handed us Q1 2026 on May 7th, 2026. And the punchline is very AI era. Revenue up 34%, developers flooding in, and then a 20% workforce cut because management says the machines are making the company faster.
That is not a normal victory lap. It's earnings unscripted, and today the company that keeps huge chunks of the web fast, secure, and programmable is basically saying, we grew hard, now we rebuild the organism.
The baseline first. Revenue was $639.8 million. Non-GAAP EPS was 25 cents. Non-GAAP operating income was $73.1 million, an 11.4% margin. We don't have consensus or last quarter revenue and EPS in our pack, so no fake precision. But gross margin is the obvious bruise. 72.8%, down 210 basis points from Q4.
Right, and the tape went straight for that bruise. The stock had actually closed up during the regular session. Then after the release, it fell hard, ending extended trading near 208, roughly a 16% sell-off. So investors did not look at this and say, charming little AI experiment.
No, they said, wait, why are you firing 1,100 people while growth is still that hot?
Exactly. And the answer from Cloudflare is, allegedly, not classic cost-cutting. They are saying internal AI usage is up 600% quarter over quarter. AI agents now review all engineering code contributions, and support workflows are being automated. That's bold. It is also the kind of bold that makes a boardroom sound like a sci-fi film with severance paperwork.
Tiny legal napkin before we get carried away. This is not financial advice, just our personal opinions and apparently emotional support for earnings calls.
Good, necessary. Because this quarter is extremely easy to over-narrate. There's a real business here. Large customers hit 4,416. Dollar-based net retention was still healthy at 118%, though down from 120. And they added over 1 million developers to Workers in one quarter. That is not nothing.
But that million developer flex came with a price, right? Because Workers, the developer platform, is lower gross margin today.
Yes, that's the crux. Cloudflare's letting developers build at the edge, run code, and increasingly run AI inference close to users. Great funnel, great strategic real estate, but the economics are less polished than the core security business, so gross margin gets hit while management points everyone toward operating margin and unit economics. Translation, please stop staring at the old scoreboard.
Okay, and for listeners who don't live inside internet infrastructure, Cloudflare is not just making websites load faster anymore. It is security, zero trust, traffic routing, developer tools, and now, apparently, a front row seat to bots replacing humans as web users.
Yes, and Prince gave the cleanest everyday example. If you shop for a digital camera, maybe you visit 5 sites. Your AI agent might visit 5,000. That means more requests, more security checks, more data movement, more Cloudflare. The web becomes less like people browsing and more like machines negotiating at insane speed.
That is fascinating and a little grim. Like, the internet went from a mall to a warehouse full of forklifts.
It's accurate. And they are already selling into that world. One Fortune 100 tech company apparently needed geolocation and proxy privacy infrastructure for agentic traffic, and Cloudflare stood it up in a week for an $8 million 2-year contract. That is the practical story under the hype.
So first impression, strong growth, real AI demand, but investors are staring at lower gross margin and a sudden human cost.
And at credibility. If you cut 20% of the workforce and say, don't worry, this is architectural, not financial, the market will ask whether you are visionary or just very good at renaming pain.
Right. Let's get into that, because the deeper question is whether Cloudflare is building the AI internet toll road or just asking investors to forgive the construction dust.
Both, annoyingly. The toll road part is real, but the construction dust is the business model being rebuilt while investors are standing there in white shoes.
Very visual and slightly hostile to footwear. What's the part people are underreading?
The packaging, not the AI headline, not even the layoffs. Cloudflare is trying to make itself the default control layer for internet traffic, security, developers, and AI agents, and then sell that through these pool of funds contracts.
Okay, translate that for normal humans who did not spend last night inside an enterprise software maze.
Right. Instead of buying one product here, another product there, CDN over here, zero trust over there, Workers somewhere else, the customer commits a bucket of spend. and draws down across the platform. So if agent traffic spikes or security needs shift or developers suddenly need edge compute, they don't renegotiate every 5 minutes.
So it's less toll booth, more prepaid pass for the robot highway.
Exactly. And that is clever. It reduces friction, but it also makes the analysis harder because you have to ask, are customers using more because Cloudflare is winning more workloads, or because they prepaid and now everyone is very motivated to call that stickiness?
That's the part I find slippery. Sticky is good. Sticky can also mean we bundled the drawer shut.
Yes, and this is where the gross margin conversation matters. Thomas Seifert basically told investors, look, stop obsessing over gross margin. His quote was, our developer products are not yet as optimized on gross margin. They also have a lower cost to book. This will be a transition we will get you ready for on Investor Day, that operating margin becomes a better measure.
That is such CFO poetry. Please meet me at Investor Day, where I will introduce you to my preferred thermometer.
Yes, but he has a point. If Workers brings in developers cheaply, and those developers eventually pull enterprises deeper into the platform, then a lower gross margin product can still be a fantastic acquisition engine. But if they don't convert,
then you just built a very popular, very expensive developer playground.
Let me say that better. Popularity is not the same as economic leverage. The million new developers are impressive, but the question is whether they become durable spend, not just usage.
And we do have some evidence that enterprise buyers want the broader platform, right? The insurance carrier story was almost absurd.
The EMEA insurance company, yes, billed through acquisitions, inherited something like 600 software vendors, and some employees were juggling up to 4 laptops just to access old databases securely.
4 laptops? That's not digital transformation. That's a desk-based escape room.
Exactly. Cloudflare sells them a 5-year SASE platform, removes 6 legacy vendors immediately with more to follow, and expected annual savings of about $1.3 million. That's not hype. That's a real painkiller.
So the human version is Cloudflare is selling less chaos.
Yes, less chaos plus more machine traffic, which leads to the second deep point. Can they run all of this cheaply enough? Because AI agents are not polite web users. They generate huge bursts of requests, inference, security checks, routing decisions. The unit economics matter brutally.
And that's where the GPU claim comes in.
Right. Matthew Prince said, across most hyperscalers, GPU utilization rates are in the single digits. We are steadily getting our GPU utilization rate to approach our CPU utilization up in the 70 to 80% range. If that is directionally true, it's a big deal.
Because they're not just buying giant, expensive hardware and hoping customers show up.
More or less. They're trying to route workloads dynamically across CPUs and GPUs at the edge, using Cloudflare OS. Smaller jobs don't need a full GPU. Harder inference can get one. It's a scheduling problem, a utilization problem, and if they solve it, they can avoid the classic AI infrastructure disease. Beautiful chips sitting around doing nothing.
But network CapEx was around 9% of revenue this quarter, and full-year guidance is still 14 to 15%. So spending probably steps up.
Yes, timing matters. I wouldn't over-celebrate 1 quarter of lower CapEx. They reaffirmed the full-year range. The real test is whether agent-type traffic produces enough high-quality revenue to justify that build-out.
And then we're back to the workforce cut, because management is basically saying the only way to scale this organism is to automate the inside of it, too.
That's the uncomfortable elegance of it. Prince said, just because you are fit does not mean you cannot get fitter. And he also said he expects more employees in 2027 than at any point in 2026, but with roles changing dramatically. So, yes, I'd not cost-cutting in the narrow sense, but definitely a human cost.
You can admire the architecture and still wince at the transition.
Exactly. They kept quota-carrying sales reps, cut heavily around support and R&D overhead, and they're taking a restructuring charge mostly in Q2. So next quarter, investors have to separate two things: the accounting noise from severance and the real evidence of productivity lift.
So the deep read is Cloudflare might be building the operating layer for machine-driven internet traffic, but the proof has to show up in consumption, utilization, and operating leverage, not just grand language.
That's it. Beautiful system design, ruthless execution risk. Now the question is whether Wall Street gives them time to prove it.
That time question is the whole thing, yeah.
Because if you're an investor, you're being asked to believe two things at once. Growth stays premium, and the company can rip out old operating habits without breaking the machine.
Right, and next quarter gives them a very clean, slightly brutal test. Guidance is revenue around $664 to $665 million, about 30% growth, with non-GAAP operating income around $90 to $91 million, and EPS of 27 cents.
So management is saying basically the engine keeps accelerating even while the garage is being remodeled.
Yes, and there's a big severance charge coming too, roughly 140 to 150 million, mostly in Q2. So the headline GAAP optics may be ugly. Investors need to look underneath that, but not excuse everything underneath it.
That's the line. Don't punish accounting noise, but don't let AI transformation become a fog machine.
Exactly. Seifert's line was, by fully embracing an agentic, AI-first organizational structure and operating model as Cloudflare's revenue scales, our efficiency and productivity will scale even faster. Good sentence, ambitious sentence, also a sentence that now has to produce evidence.
Evidence like what, if you had to pick just a few tells?
Gross margin floor, operating leverage after the restructuring, whether developers convert into real paid workloads, and whether CapEx staying at 14 to 15% of revenue still feels disciplined once AI traffic ramps.
And sentiment-wise, I think the market can forgive bold. It cannot forgive confusing. Cloudflare has to make this story measurable, not just thrilling.
Yes, less manifesto, more dashboard.
Honestly, that's a fair motto for half of software right now.
For half of civilization, maybe.
Okay, on that cheerful note, Cloudflare is fascinating, a little unnerving, and absolutely not boring. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye for now. If you'd like these earnings chats to just appear when a new quarter drops, following the show is the easiest little habit. And quick transparency note, Earnings Unscripted is AI-assisted, built from company filings and call transcripts, including the numbers you heard pulled from the release and earnings call, not vibes. If you've got feedback or a ticker you want us to cover, send it to earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca. Take care, and we'll see you after the next call.
See you next time.